The Odyssey is directed by Christopher Nolan and stars Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, and among others. And in this story, it tells with the journey of Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, who is on his way back to his home after doing his time in the Trojan War. And along the way, him and his men are trying to get back home, along with trying to survive from these mythical beings and a lot of other things that are unfolding of what he doesn't know of what's happening back at home, that his queen is trying to pretty much like take ownership, what is trying to basically keep things in motion after she thinks that he's dead, but not knowing that he's still on his way back. And it gets into a long journey for him to pretty much return. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Christopher Nolan, who, what can I say? I've went through so much detail about the guy over the years, and I've talked about him countless times in the past, and he's one of my favorite directors of all time. And going into this kind of project was definitely something that I got myself interested in, especially since back when I was in ninth grade, I actually did read the original story of the Odyssey by Homer. And I remember enjoying the Odyssey when I was in school, but it's also been a long time since I really remember it. But I remember really getting into a lot of the mythical elements and a lot of the ways that it's the struggles that Odysseus in the story was really trying to get back home for and everything. And it was also something that has been previously adapted into different forms of media, whether it's some of the movies that I've heard that have come out in the past. And there was even one that comes to mind specifically that came out in like '97 that was a miniseries that I did actually watch in school, and I remember enjoying it. It's just that I haven't watched it since I watched it in school at that time. But believe it or not, the one actual adaptation that I actually unintentionally is based off of the Odyssey that I've watched countless times is "O Brother, Where Art Thou?" Now, this is one that I didn't even realize when I was a kid was actually based off of the Odyssey, because I actually had to learn about it growing up when I was reading about it in school. I was like, wait a minute, all this stuff that was going on in this is pretty much like a 30s version of the Odyssey, and a lot of the elements are all there, and it really works not only as a really fun comedy, but the same kind of structure and everything really works in that regard. Going from the trailers, it really got me hyped, especially with not only the cast involved, but also a lot of the set pieces and everything that Nolan's known for, especially making things on an epic scale. And so I could not wait to see this when it came out. And after upon seeing it, it was everything I wanted it to be. I was really, it reached my expectations that I wanted to see. And while there were some things I was certainly going into it knowing about it, with all the controversy going on and a lot of the things that a lot of people were talking about, I just went into it just wanting just more of a, maybe not a direct adaptation, but just one that at least followed the story to its advantage and really did its own spin, because I really felt like after what Nolan was able to accomplish with this, that it really makes me feel like he can pave the way with horror if he does a future horror film. And so to get my pros out of the way, I thought, what can I say? The cast in this were all phenomenal. Matt Damon not only really nails it as Odysseus, but he was able to capture that, that very type of guilt that we've seen in a lot of other Nolan's films, and this is probably one of his best performances I've seen him probably since The Martian. I really loved him in a lot of other stuff he's done over the years, like the Last Duel and things like that, and even earlier this year when we have The Rip. But this one, he really gets to showcase a lot of being that more kind of stern, just trying to get home and everything, and really fighting to get back to get back to his people. And the lengths that he goes through in this is not only very captivating, but I really appreciate that the movie has like a different realm where it's really showcasing a lot of the stuff that he has like a moral ground, so to speak, where he's doing things like throughout the film, especially in the beginning, where you really question his kind of like leadership and everything, but at the same time you still understand as the movie unfolds later on of what he's really going through. Just all the lengths that he goes through, and also the physicality, because it seems like Matt Damon really pushed himself hard for this, because not only did he work out and really go on a really type of way of getting himself into shape, but he also grew a beard, which was definitely different, because I'm not really used to seeing Matt Damon with a beard, because he grew it pretty fucking long throughout the movie. And I really appreciate the rest of the cast too were also phenomenal. You got Tom Holland in there also playing his son, that was great, and Hathaway. One of the two other biggest standouts for me personally were Robert Pattinson as playing the kind of antagonist that's trying to marry Anne Hathaway and everything. And I actually really do enjoy how Robert Pattinson has been able to branch out into other kind of villainous roles, like he showcased in Devil in Me, which, funny enough, also starred Tom Holland. And then you also got some of the other big standouts, which include Himesh Patel, who played Matt Damon's right hand in command. I thought he was great, and also you have one of the other biggest standouts, Samantha Morton, who won't reveal her role, but she was definitely one that really goes for it in a lot of in her part, and just it's always really a fun guess who of like as you go along the movie of all these different casts of all these different cast members that show up in a Nolan film, whether it's for a small appearance or for a large pivotal role. I appreciate that each of them have a pivotal part in the film that goes into context of the story, and so. As the movie unfolds, also the story itself, I appreciate that the structure of it gets me back into it harpens me back to what I really love about Nolan's earlier films, about how he tells the tale in a nonlinear format. And while at first, much kind of like what I had with Tenet, I was kind of questioning some of the things that were happening at first, and it was a little hard with the editing. But as the movie continued to go on, I really found myself engaged and very invested of playing it out. And then when we get to our climax, it doesn't hold back. It goes really balls to the wall. And I think probably out of Nolan's films, this is really surprising how this one really is probably like his most brutal that I've seen, because this doesn't hold back on its gore. And just the cinematography and the production design and the scale that Nolan was able to accomplish so much with the IMAX cameras and the on-set locations and stuff, I thought were fantastic to look at. And the creature designs I thought were phenomenal too, because there was a really good blend of a lot of practical effects that were thrown in here, especially the Cyclops. And there's some really disturbing moments that come into play, especially in the cave scenes where you have with them coming across the Cyclops, and some other stuff when we get into like the stuff that involves with like witches and other mythical beings, that while you may not see a whole lot of like phantasmal elements a lot throughout the film, but when they are on screen, I thought it gives you the kind of impression of what you're imagining in certain parts too, especially when we get to the later half of the film. And so that worked. And then I really do enjoy the score in this too by what's his name, Ludwig. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce his name. The same composer that's done Nolan's recent films in the last couple. It was great, especially the main theme that it plays. And not only was it great to see in IMAX, but also the sound quality was booming too, because it went pretty loud in a lot of parts, especially when you're hearing the Cyclops, screaming and stuff and everything. And there's just so much more to really go on about. If I have like any kind, and even when we get into some of the things that play into, I love the movie, how the movie plays into the themes of guilt and a lot of the stuff that we typically see in Nolan's fashion, but also the different struggles as it comes with characters that are trying to really pave the way and really fight, vouch for Odysseus. Because when we get into the last third of how it all plays out, it also becomes kind of like a, I don't want to say, like a mixture of the Dark Knight trilogy with some of the action sequences, but also it really plays into certain stuff that we've seen from Nolan that kind of has some like, that really, it all favors in its own spin of, it hits you on an emotional level, because all the links and things that you're seeing throughout the film, they all work in their own way. And even some of the subplots, the subplots that we get with like involving with Helen of Troy and things like that are a factor. It does have some pretty unexpected twists and turns that happen later on that I was like, oh shit, that I didn't see coming, which is what I really love about Nolan's films and how they key into that. And the way that they're all, and you could argue that there's some questionable stuff that they do with the movie, like obviously with the actors using American accents and stuff, but I've come to really understand that over the time, because I've seen movies like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and even some glimpses of like movies like Last Temptation of Christ, where some actors, it's an intentional choice that they're going for, where they're using their own voices instead of going for the type of period. And while that can take away the authenticity, and I totally understand that for those that have read the story and everything, to me, I still bought it, and it didn't really bother me that much, along with some of the other casting choices they come into play with it and everything. And so, if I have to get any kind of minor little things, I will say that at the beginning it was a little hard to focus and to kind of figure out like where we're happening, because the movie is all over the place as far as its structure. But that didn't bother me, because I was still able to pick up later on in the movie. And there's also maybe a couple parts where you do kind of question some of the effects in certain parts, but I was still so like into what was happening with a lot of the scenes that it didn't take me out of it or anything. And while I totally do understand that the movie didn't go for a authenticity that they were going for, I still really did enjoy the way that the costumes worked and a lot of the sets and the way the action scenes and the way the story unfolds throughout Like, it's everything that I truly wanted to see out of Odyssey film, and I'm really open to see what Nolan does next, especially if he decides to do a horror film next. And so with that, I'm going to give the film a phenomenal grade on the Film Freak meter. And so, for those of you who've also seen the Odyssey and also the other adaptations of the past or read the story, let me know in the comments of what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.